The Frozen Discovery. The ice planet Varnak, 12 was a graveyard dressed in white. Ancient ruins poked through frozen dunes like the ribs of some colossal beast, and the wind screamed through broken towers that had once scraped alien skies. This was where empires came to die, their bones picked clean by scavengers and time. Foreman pulled his thermal suit tighter as he approached the geothermal relay station. His breath fogged inside his helmet, and each step crunched through snow that hadn't been disturbed in decades. The Union had sent him here to fix a broken heating grid, routine work that nobody else wanted. His crew had abandoned him when the equipment started failing and communications went dark, but stayed. Something about this desolate place made his heart beat faster, as if the ice itself was whispering forgotten secrets. For 15 days, he worked alone. The relay station was buried beneath layers of frost and debris, requiring him to cut through walls with a plasma torch. The ancient metal screamed under the heat, releasing clouds of steam that crystallized instantly in the bitter air. Then, on the 15th day, his scanner detected something impossible. Stopped mid-cut and stared at the readout. A life signature, faint but unmistakable, pulsed deep beneath 30 meters of glacial sediment. The rhythm was too slow to be natural, once every 8 seconds, like a sleeping giant's heartbeat. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice muffled by the helmet. He traced the signal through twisted corridors filled with broken statuary and faded murals. The deeper he went, the stronger the pulse became. Hours passed as he melted through layers of ice, his cutting torch painting everything in harsh orange light. Finally, sparks screamed and titanium groaned as an ancient seal gave way. Before him lay a vault, its entrance carved with symbols he didn't recognize. Above the doorway, etched in old Vernan script, were words that made his blood run cold: "Here sleeps the Sovereign Fang." Hesitated at the threshold. Whatever lay beyond had been sealed here for a reason. But the life signature pulsed stronger now, calling to him like a heartbeat in the darkness. He stepped inside, and his world changed forever. The Awakening. Inside the vault, Rhee's headlamp illuminated something that shouldn't exist. Suspended in a cylinder of crystal-clear ice was a creature of legend, massive, wolf-like, with fur that gleamed silver and red beneath the frost. Its body was coiled in a defensive position, as if ready to spring into action across the centuries. The beast was enormous, easily twice Rhee's height even in its curled state. Thick chains bound its limbs, etched with stasis runes that had long since corroded. Its face was part wolf, part something else entirely, ancient and noble, with exposed fangs that spoke of power held in check. Around its neck was a collar fused into the flesh, marked with Imperial insignia. Rhee leaned closer to read the inscription: "Property of Empress Sira. Designation: Fenra, Wolf-class bioweapon. Exile sentence: 3,000 cycles. Do not revive. 3,000 years." This creature had been frozen here since before humanity had spread to the stars. Rhee's scanner confirmed what his eyes couldn't believe: the life signature was coming from within the ice. Somehow, impossibly, the wolf called Fenra was still alive. He should have left. Should have sealed the vault and reported his findings to the authorities. Instead, he found himself studying the creature's face, searching for something he couldn't name. There was nobility there, even in sleep. This wasn't the expression of a monster, it was the face of someone who had chosen exile over compromise. "You've waited long enough," Rhee whispered, placing his gloved hand against the ice. The decision made itself. He rerouted emergency power from his drill's core into the chamber's heating system, watching as ancient machinery hummed to life. Steam hissed from hidden vents as the cryogenic systems began their first cycle in millennia. Sweat poured down Rhee's neck despite the freezing air. He knew what he was doing was more than reckless, it was potentially catastrophic. But something deep in his gut told him that you don't bury someone like this unless you're afraid they'll be remembered. As the final layer of frost cracked away, the chamber fell silent. Fenra didn't move. His massive chest rose once, then again, slower than any breath should be. Then, with a rumble that made the very walls vibrate, the wolf's eyes opened. They were gold, pure, ancient, and very much alive. First contact. Ree didn't flinch when those golden eyes fixed on him. He pulled off his helmet and stepped forward into the bitter cold, his breath forming clouds in the ancient air. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his voice shaking but clear. "You were thrown away, but I pulled you out." Fenra's massive head tilted slightly, studying this strange human who had dared to wake him. The corroded chains binding his forelimbs cracked and disintegrated into rust with the warmth Ree had pumped into the vault. With a grunt of pressure and age, the wolf rose to his full height, towering over Ree by nearly 2 meters. For a moment that stretched like eternity, they simply stared at each other. Then Fenra began to circle, his breath fogging the air with heat that hadn't escaped in centuries. He sniffed once, paused, then stopped directly in front of the human and lowered his massive head. Ree extended a bare hand. Fenra pressed his nose to it, and in that moment, something ancient shifted in the air. Not subservience, not ownership, recognition. "You're not a weapon anymore," Ree whispered. Fenra, born of war and shaped for death, closed his eyes for the first time in millennia. Not to sleep, but to trust. The nights on Varnak, 12 seemed longer now, or maybe it just felt that way because Fenra didn't sleep. He stood watch atop the ridge beyond the outer perimeter, where the wind howled and the metal fences groaned like ghosts. Ree hadn't asked him to guard the station, but the wolf did it anyway, like instinct, like duty, like penance. During the day, Fenra followed Ree through the snow like a living shadow, paws silent, breath steaming in the cold. He didn't speak, though there was intelligence in his gaze, quiet, calculating, always alert. By the 4th night, Ree had managed to repair one of the long-range communication towers. It flickered on, blinked once, and screamed a burst of static-laced pings into the stars. The message was simple maintenance data, nothing about Fenra, nothing about the vault. But the moment Ree turned away, Fenra lifted his head and growled low, like a drumbeat in his chest. A ship was coming. They heard it long before the radar did, low-frequency rumbles against the ice that only ancient ears could catch. Fenra stood motionless at the ridge, eyes fixed on the sky. Then a sharp flash split the clouds, and a scout transport broke through the atmosphere in a hot descent. Ree cursed under his breath. No markings, no beacon ID. Not military, not corporate. Worse, scavengers. The ship landed half a kilometer from the base, its occupants emerging like predators scenting blood. Through his cracked binoculars, Ree watched 5 figures in frost armor approach, heavy rifles gleaming, their suits patched with stolen Imperial insignia. They weren't entirely wrong to think they'd found treasure. They just didn't know what kind. The reckoning. The scavengers stopped when they saw Fenra. The lead pirate laughed, his voice crackling through external audio. "Either someone's breeding apex war dogs out here, or we just found ourselves a myth." Fenra didn't respond. He stood in the snow, fur rippling in the wind, eyes locked onto the intruders with the patience of a predator who had waited 3,000 years. Ree emerged from the station, disruptor rifle slung over his shoulder. "This is a private site," he called out, his voice carrying farther than it should have. "Turn back." "Not anymore," the scavenger replied, raising his weapon. "That thing's Imperial bioforged. Worth maybe 100,000 credits per tooth." He shouldn't have raised his weapon. The snow behind him exploded as Fenra moved. He didn't roar or bark, he struck like a storm, ripping through bone and steel with surgical precision. The first 2 pirates went down in a blur, their rifles flung uselessly into the snow. The third tried to shoot, but his shot went wide when Fenra lunged over him and bit the barrel clean off his weapon. The last 2 turned to run. Smart, but too late. Ree didn't fire a single shot. He didn't need to. When it was over, 5 figures lay groaning in the snow, wounded but alive. Fenra circled them once, tail high, growling a wordless warning that needed no translation. "You didn't kill them," Ree said, his voice filled with wonder. Fenra turned his gaze slowly toward Ree, and in a voice like gravel and thunder, he spoke for the first time, "They weren't her." The words hung in the frozen air like a confession. Ree understood then, Fenra's exile hadn't been for killing, but for refusing to kill. For choosing mercy when the Empire demanded slaughter. They bound the pirates and locked them in the old research module with enough heat and rations to survive. Repatched their communications but rewired the signal to delay transmission by 72 hours. It bought them time, not from justice, but from attention. But the galaxy was already watching. 2 nights later, a probe arrived, slim, fast, Imperial design but old. It hovered outside the base for 13 seconds, scanned the ridge, and left. Fenra didn't chase it. His silence told Ree everything he needed to know. Somewhere, someone who remembered the Sovereign Fang had felt his breath stir across the ice and sent a whisper. That whisper was spreading. That night, Ree sat beside the forge and asked, "Why didn't you kill them?" Fenra lifted his massive head, nostrils flaring. "Because the last time I killed, I was promised it would save lives. Instead, they buried me with the ones I spared." Ree didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They sat in the firelight together, man and myth, both surrounded by snow and history's silence. "Then why help me?" Ree finally asked. The wolf's golden eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. "Because you pulled me out without asking for anything." Far above, in corridors of stars, the Empire stirred as a new rumor took hold. The Sovereign Fang had awakened, and this time he stood beside a human who had no army, only honor. The final choice. It started with a silver drop pod, clean, sleek, adorned with the twin-star emblem of the surviving Imperial Directorate. It landed with grace, not violence, sinking into the snow just 30 meters from Ree's perimeter fence. Fenra didn't growl or rise. He simply stared at it like one might stare at a gravestone that shouldn't exist. The door hissed open, and out stepped a woman, alone and unarmed. She wore a dark cloak embroidered with diplomatic insignia, her silver hair gleaming despite the perpetual twilight of Varnak, 12. "I am Ambassador Kellen of the Imperial Remnant," she called out, her voice carrying clearly across the frozen wasteland. "I come to speak with the one they call the Sovereign Fang." Fenra padded down from his ridge, each step deliberate. When he reached speaking distance, he sat, not in submission, but with the dignity of an equal meeting an equal. "I know why you're here," Fenra said, his voice a low rumble. "The Empire wants its weapon back." Kellen shook her head. "The Empire is dead, Fenra. What remains are fragments, trying to piece together a future from the shards of the past. We don't want a weapon, we want a guardian." She gestured to the stars beyond the planet's perpetual cloud cover. "The outer colonies are falling to raiders and worse. Pirates who would make today's scavengers look like children. Entire systems have gone dark. We need someone the people can believe in, someone whose name still carries weight." "My name," Fenra said quietly, "was buried with my honor 3,000 years ago." "No," Ree stepped forward, surprising himself. "Your honor is why you're here. It's why you saved those refugees. It's why you spared the scavengers. It's why you stood watch over a stranger who freed you." Ambassador Kellen looked between them with interest. "The galaxy has heard whispers. A human and a legend, standing together against the darkness. Some say it's impossible. Others say it's exactly what we need." Fenra was quiet for a long time, his golden eyes reflecting the distant stars. Finally, he spoke, "I was made to be a weapon. I chose to be a guardian. If I go with you, what guarantee do I have that I won't be asked to kill innocents again?" "You have mine," Kellen said simply. "And his." She nodded toward Ree. "We're not asking you to serve the Empire, Fenra. We're asking you to help us build something better." Ree felt his heart pounding. "You want me to come too?" "A legend needs a witness," Kellen replied. Someone to remind the galaxy that even myths were once just stories about people who chose to do the right thing. Fenra rose and walked to Ree, lowering his massive head until they were eye to eye. You pulled me from the ice because you believed I was more than what they made me. Will you help me prove you were right? Ree looked at the wolf who had become his friend, then at the ambassador who offered them both a chance to matter, and finally at the stars where entire worlds waited in the darkness. Yeah, he said, his voice steady for the first time in weeks. Yeah, I will. 3 days later, the silver ship lifted off from Varnak, 12, carrying with it a man who fixed things, a wolf who protected people, and an ambassador who believed that legends could still change the galaxy. Behind them, the ancient ruins remained buried in snow, keeping their secrets. But ahead of them, among the stars, new stories were waiting to be written. Stories of honor over obedience, of friendship over fear, and of the choice to be something more than what others expect you to be. As their ship disappeared into the void, the ice wind of Varnak, 12 carried a new sound, not the hungry howl of winter, but the whisper of hope, spreading from world to world like wildfire. The end.